I divorced the woman I had loved for 10 years. In the 7th year of secretly loving Anna, she told me, let's get married. In the 3rd year of our marriage, I told her, let's divorce. In the 10th year of loving Anna, I proposed divorce. It all started when she didn't come home after work. I drove to her company to find her and saw her standing with a man outside the building. I recognized him immediately. He was Anna's ex-boyfriend, the one she had been tangled up with for 5 years. They stood on the steps, the man tall and handsome in his suit, while Anna playfully tossed her hair, looking delicate and almost shy. They weren't holding hands, nor were they embracing, yet there was an intimacy that felt like no one else could step in between them. I glanced at our chat history. The last message I sent her read, "Are you coming home for dinner tonight?" She hadn't replied. It had been a while since she'd responded to my messages. Every time I asked, she was always busy, but clearly, she wasn't too busy to chat with another man. I didn't approach them. I just stood quietly off to the side and watched. Anna's smile was unfamiliar. It suddenly hit me, she hadn't smiled at me like that in a long time. We were supposed to be the closest of couples, yet whenever she came home, her face was always cold. I had thought it was because she was exhausted from work, but the truth was, I wasn't the one who could make her smile anymore. She glanced over casually, and her expression immediately froze when she saw me. She said something to the man, whose smile faded, but he waved at her and, after giving me a look, turned and left. Anna walked over and got into the passenger seat without a word. With a furrowed brow, she snapped. "What are you doing here?" I replied calmly, "I'm here to pick you up from work." "Didn't you say you wouldn't let Henry into your company?" Her frown deepened. "Henry graduated from Oxford, and he's got a lot of experience. A talent like that, where else are you going to find? Why wouldn't I let him come?" She was clearly irritated. "Can you stop thinking about love and relationships all the time? Look at what he's like now, multiple companies are fighting to hire him. If I didn't know him, he might not have even considered it." The disdain in her voice was unmistakable. I stared at the distant car lights weaving through the night, silent. Once home, Anna didn't speak to me. She stormed into the study and slammed the door shut. She was angry. She didn't even realize that she only used anger to cover her guilt. Probably only someone who had been by her side for 10 years, like me, would know her that well. But sometimes, I hated myself for knowing her so well. It would have been easier if I had stayed oblivious, if the pain hadn't been so clear. Neither of us spoke first. We didn't argue like we usually did, shouting and raising our voices. Instead, we had a cold war, separated by a door. Moments later, the door to the study was thrown open violently. Anna stood there, face dark with anger. "What do you want from me?" "I'll tell you now, I'm not going to fire Henry. You either accept it, or we get a divorce." I interrupted her, speaking softly. "You don't need to fire him. Let's divorce." She froze for a moment. "What did you say?" She seemed to laugh in disbelief, her eyes narrowing with a hint of mockery. "George, I'm not joking with you. Enough already. There's no negotiation about Henry. Don't talk tough now, and then come crawling back later begging me to fix things." She sneered, like a dog. Anna was always so blunt with her words. The first time we fought like this, I locked myself in a room all day, heartbroken. But now, all I felt was a faint pain in my chest, quickly numbed by resignation. I didn't argue with her. I took the divorce papers from my bag and placed them on the table. "I've already signed it. The house is yours, the cash and car are mine. It's about half each. If you have any other demands, we can discuss them." Anna was silent. She looked at me in disbelief, and that disbelief quickly turned into anger. She grabbed the papers, scanned them, and then coldly said, "Fine, you've got guts. George, once I sign, I won't go back on it. Think carefully." I handed her the pen. Her face darkened, and she snatched the pen from my hand. With swift strokes, she signed her name and threw the papers in my face. Tomorrow we'll get divorced," she said, seething. "Don't regret it." I nodded. 9 a.m. tomorrow, I've already made the appointment." She paused, and I didn't say anything else. I shut the door and went to the guest room. Outside, I could hear things being thrown, but I lit a cigarette. The smoke spread in the mist, and I took a deep drag. How did it all come to this? In the beginning, I wanted nothing more than to be happy. Anna and I had a flash marriage. For her, it came out of the blue. But for me, it was already the 7th year of loving her in silence. At the time, she had just broken up with Henry. During their relationship, I never dared to disturb them, but after they broke up, I started attending gatherings where she was present. At one of those reunions, Anna drank a lot. By the end of the night, her eyes were red from the alcohol. I knew it was because of Henry. At that time, Henry had just received his acceptance letter from Oxford University, while Anna had taken over her father's company and was planning to develop it domestically. They couldn't convince each other. The couple, who had loved each other for 5 years, finally split after a big argument. When we left the gathering, several friends, knowing I had always liked her, gave me knowing looks and nudged me to take her home. I couldn't refuse. I hailed a cab, helping her inside, half supporting, half carrying her back to her place. Anna lay on me, her body hot and soft, and it made my mind spiral. I didn't know where to put my hands, fumbling to turn on the lights. In the darkness, she mumbled drunkenly in my ear, "Henry." I couldn't make out the words clearly and thought she was calling me. Her breath, warm with alcohol, brushed against my ear, and I froze. My body reacted uncontrollably, and when she kissed me, I didn't pull away. The next morning, Anna had regained her composure. It was as if nothing had happened the night before. I had no choice but to leave awkwardly. She didn't contact me again. I stayed at home for several days, and eventually, I gathered the courage to send her a message. "Are you free today? Want to go watch a movie?" Anna didn't reply for an entire day. Just when I was about to give up, she suddenly called me. Her voice was emotionless. "I'm pregnant. George, let's get married." I still remember exactly how I felt when I heard those words. It was the first time I truly understood the meaning of heart bursting with joy. It felt like fireworks exploding inside my chest, even more dizzying than winning the grand prize. I suppressed my overwhelming joy and asked, trying to sound calm, "Do you like me? I don't want you to be with me just because of the baby." Anna was silent for a long time, avoiding my question. "Don't think too much about it. Come see me later." After the call, I clenched my fists tightly, my mind full of 17-year-old Anna in her high school uniform. Love, unknowingly sprouted, and deeply rooted. I didn't know when I had fallen for Anna. Was it when she smiled at me in the evening study session, her eyes curving up, or when she placed a coffee on my desk and said, "This is for you"? All I knew was that I had loved her for too long, far too long. It was like a person walking alone in the dark finally seeing the light of dawn. Although her parents didn't like me and gave me a hard time at the wedding. Although the baby was not born in the end. At that time, I truly felt like the happiest person in the world. Being with her, even the bitterness became sweetness. How foolish. In the darkness, a bitter smile crept onto my lips. I never imagined it would shatter so quickly, just 3 short years. The next morning, I had everything packed, but Anna was still asleep. I knocked on the door for a while before she finally opened it, wearing a wine-red satin slip dress and barefoot, her face full of impatience. "Are you in such a hurry?" I glanced at my watch. "If we're late, we'll have to reschedule." I paused for a moment. "You've been talking about wanting a divorce. Now you can finally have it. Aren't you happy?" "I'm happy," she gritted her teeth and smiled. "Of course, I'm happy. Henry's back too. You're so considerate, making space for him." I nodded. "Let's go then." The entire drive was silent. Anna kept her face cold, and I had already gotten used to it. I didn't know when exactly we stopped talking to each other. At first, I enjoyed our conversations. After loving her for so many years, I had so much I wanted to say. I'd share everything with her, seeing a dog on the street, hearing a nice song, watching a good movie. I will tell her. But she rarely replied. It was usually after a long while, when she needed something from me, that she'd give a reluctant, I couldn't deceive myself. She wasn't just naturally quiet. I'd seen Henry's social media, and in the chat records, Anna seemed like someone I didn't recognize, sweet, cute, engaging with him on every topic. After a while, I stopped telling her. When we arrived at the courthouse, a lady greeted us and tried to mediate between us. "Is it a case of irreconcilable differences?" Just as Anna was about to speak, I smiled and answered, "No, we had a whirlwind marriage. There was never any foundation of love. Now it feels like it's not working out." Anna glanced at me, her expression complicated. The woman tried to persuade us for a long time, but I kept shutting her down. Finally, she sighed. "You'll have a 2-month cooling-off period. Go back and think it over. Such a handsome couple, you two are so well matched. Young people always act impulsively, think about each other's good points. I thought for a moment. Anna was beautiful. Back in high school, she was the most gorgeous girl in our school. She came from a good family too. Her parents owned a company, they weren't lacking money. When we were in college, we'd take the bus, while she and Henry were already driving a sports car, inseparable. Her personality was great too. She had a large circle of friends, never a dull moment. She was a great person. But she was never good to me. When we left the courthouse, the midday sun was blinding, and I had to squint my eyes. Anna must have thought I was crying, as she gave me a smug smile. Regretting it now? Too late. George, she stood in front of me, a head shorter than me but somehow managing to exude an air of superiority. I'm not turning back. I didn't say anything, just drove her home. Once we got home, Anna lay sideways on the sofa and, as usual, ordered me around. Get me a glass of water. I ignored her and walked past, pulling my suitcase out of the bedroom. Where are you going? She furrowed her brows. I found a new place. I'm moving out today. I paused and continued. The things you bought for me are in the bedroom closet. Who cares about that stuff? Anna suddenly exploded in anger. I forced a smile. We are divorced. Let's at least say a proper goodbye. She stood up abruptly, grabbed my suitcase, opened the door, and shoved it out with all her might, kicking it after. If you're leaving, just get out. Her eyes were narrowed, burning with suppressed fury. I stared at the suitcase on the ground, frozen for a moment. Then I didn't say anything else. I walked over, picked up the suitcase, and entered the elevator without looking back at her. Her gaze burned into my back, like it wanted to burn a hole through me. But in the end, the elevator doors closed, cutting off the heat of her stare completely. I didn't want the house because I didn't want any further connection with Anna. I didn't want to see her things, smell her scent, or think of anything related to her. Honestly, I had already made up my mind about the divorce. I always knew Anna didn't love me. But I had always believed that after all these years, even if she had a heart of stone, I could melt it with my warmth. But after all this time, she still didn't love me. And my warmth had run out. Only then did I realize that some people really are irreplaceable. I could never see her smile like she did when she was with Henry, no matter how hard I tried. I moved into the apartment I had rented, still unpacking my things when Anna's mom called. George, did you buy Anna any stomach medicine? I heard her stomach's been acting up again. I've told you before, George, I didn't want Anna to marry you. Don't take it the wrong way, but seriously, what do you have that could match our Anna? You even had to live in our house, and you're no better than her ex, Henry. I only let you into our family because you seemed decent to her, but look at you too, no children. I don't want to be harsh, but is it because of you? Is there something wrong with you? Let me tell you, Anna can't be without children. If you have a problem, you'd better speak up now. Anna's still young, don't waste her time. I tightened my grip on the phone. Anna's family was wealthy, and her mother had always looked down on my family. My parents had to flatter her just to get a smile. For years, she had never seen me in a positive light, no matter how much I tried to please her. This wasn't the first time she'd said something like this. Every time we met, every time she called me, she'd repeat how I'd climbed above my station by marrying Anna, and how her family had reluctantly accepted me. Anna never spoke up for me. She only told me, isn't my mom right? She said her mother had already made so many sacrifices just to accept me. So, every time, I'd endure it. But this time, I didn't need to endure anymore. I said flatly, we're divorced now. I'm not obligated to buy her any medicine. And just so you know, you didn't give birth to me, and you never raised me, so you have no right to tell me what to do. If you don't like it, I suggest you poke your eyes out so you won't have to see me anymore. I hung up without waiting for her to respond, blocking her number immediately. After thinking for a moment, I deleted and blocked all the contacts from her family, including Anna's. After doing all that, I let out a long sigh and lay back on the bed. Divorce wasn't as hard as I had imagined. Anna liked to threaten me with divorce during every argument. It was like she knew I'd never leave her and used my love to hurt me without hesitation. And as she had expected, the first time she threatened me, I was scared. She was right. I had kneeled before her like a dog, apologizing and promising I would change. As long as she stayed with me, I'd do anything. I covered my eyes with my palm, feeling the wetness there. But even pain has its limits. Over and over, that pain became numb, and the chains that had been digging into my bones, soaked with rotting flesh, finally let go of me. And now, all that was left was relief. Anna didn't try to contact me again. It seemed like she had completely disappeared from my life. Until 2 weeks later, a classmate suddenly reached out, asking if I was going to the class reunion the next night. I had originally planned to refuse. I really didn't want to see Anna again. But then I realized, I wasn't the one at fault, and I didn't need to avoid her. So, I agreed to go. At the reunion, I was chatting with some people when the door was suddenly pushed open. Anna walked in. She was wearing a form-fitting white satin gown, the light shimmering off her curves, making her look like she was glowing. Behind her was Henry, dressed in a custom-made suit. As soon as they entered, the room erupted in excitement. Did Henry and Anna get back together? I knew you two wouldn't stay apart. All that drama, and now you're back together. Exactly, I remember when Henry went abroad, Anna drank so much she almost ended up in the hospital. Guess she's been waiting all these years, huh? When Anna and I got married, she said she didn't like the formality, so we didn't have a wedding. Afterwards, she never posted anything about me on social media. Even when we went out together, she kept her distance from me. It's almost laughable. We had been married for 3 years, but aside from a couple of close friends, no one knew we were even together. Anna's eyes scanned the crowd and landed on me. Her gaze held a trace of mockery, her lips curling into a slight smirk. I didn't look at her. I turned to speak to the person next to me. She scowled, sitting down with Henry. Henry, how come you're back? I heard things are going really well for you abroad. Are you planning to settle down here? Someone joked. Henry's lips curled into a smug smile. I'm getting on in years. I should start thinking about family matters. My family's been pushing me. He didn't specify, but everyone laughed. Yeah, Anna's been waiting all these years. Now that you're back, I guess it's time for good things to come together. Henry didn't say anything, only smiled and nodded. Anna, you really are loyal. But Henry's a successful man now, handsome too. You two really do make a perfect match. But speaking of handsome, I think George is pretty good looking too. Back in school, people used to argue about whether you or Henry was the most handsome. I was about to speak when Anna sneered. Looks don't matter if that's all someone has. Some people spend their whole day thinking about love, acting like househusbands. What fools. No wonder no one loves them. I turned pale. I knew she was talking about me. Back when she started her business, Anna was always busy, and if I had pursued my career too, it would have been hard for us to spend time together. So, for her, I turned down every offer and stayed at home to take care of her. Everyone quieted down, and then a classmate tried to smooth things over. Come on, don't say it like that. George had offers from several companies back then. His university project made millions of dollars. I remember one company even offered him a $3 million salary. But why didn't you take them? The classmate asked, curiously. Did you get married? Anna froze and turned to look at me. I lowered my gaze and replied calmly, yes, I married a worthless woman. I turned down every opportunity, just so I could take care of her. But trash is trash. No matter how much I gave, it was useless. At least I cut my losses in time. One of the guys nodded, clearly sympathetic. Yeah, some women are like that. When they get married, they expect the man to be their servant, but then they complain he can't make enough money, call him a failure. It's like they think they deserve everything. I spit. Women like that deserve to die alone. The conversation shifted quickly, and everyone started discussing their own relationships and marriages, how to avoid ending up with someone like a scumbag or a gold digger. I had always been submissive to Anna, but this was the first time I mocked her. She stared at me directly, looking somewhat confused. You. She tried to say something, but her voice was drowned out by the noise. When the reunion ended, I got in my car and was about to leave. But just as I started the engine, someone knocked on my window. One of Anna's close friends looked at me awkwardly. George, Anna's stomach condition has flared up again. Could you take her home? Only 1 or 2 people at the reunion knew that Anna and I were married. I frowned. Where's Henry? She hesitated. He said he would take Anna home, but she wouldn't let him. Anna listens to you the most. You. I glanced over. Not far away, Anna was standing by the hotel entrance, bathed in orange light. Her gaze briefly met mine before she quickly looked away, as if the contact burned her. Henry stood next to her, saying something, trying to drape his coat over her shoulders. She looked distracted, frowning as she waved him off. "We're divorced," I turned my gaze away. "Sorry, you should find someone else." "George." Her friend tried to say something, but I just nodded and drove off. In the rearview mirror, I saw Anna watching me. She was slightly bent over, her face pale. I didn't look back. I just drove away. I had been so attentive to Anna that even her friends knew how much I cared. Her stomach problems were a result of drinking too much when Henry left, and I had always taken care of her. In those 3 years, I had gone from being someone who didn't know anything about household chores to becoming the model husband, cooking, making soup for her, just to take better care of her health. I bought all her stomach medicine and packed it in daily doses, reminding her to take them on time. When she forgot her medicine on a business trip and had a stomachache in the middle of the night, I would rush to catch a flight in the freezing cold just to bring her the medicine. But when I arrived at her hotel, she was already asleep. I stood outside for hours, waiting in the snow, until she finally opened the door. She frowned and impatiently said, "Give me the medicine. Now, go." It was that night, on my way back, that I had a car accident and spent 2 weeks in the hospital. She never once came to see me. The past gnawed at my heart like worms. It wasn't the sharp, agonizing pain, but the constant, subtle ache that was impossible to ignore. Sometimes, I didn't even understand myself. I wasn't the kind of person to be so humble, so cheap. But when love was in the air, it didn't make sense. It could easily destroy all of a person's principles. One smile from her, and all my boundaries crumbled, letting her slowly tear me apart. But now, my love was all gone. The George who once had her in his every thought, the one who was willing to give everything for her, had been ground to dust by her hands. The next day, just as I was about to leave, I received a call from my parents. They said that both Anna's parents and they were waiting for me at home to talk. I had expected this day to come. Divorce wasn't just about 2 people, it was about 2 families. Even though I didn't want to go back, I knew I would have to face it sooner or later. But in the 2 short weeks since I'd been away, this place that once felt like home now seemed strange to me. The moment I stepped inside, I was overwhelmed by a sense of suffocation. Both families were sitting on the couch, and Anna was sitting to the side, fiddling with her nails, her head down, not saying a word. I guess they could tell I was serious this time. Anna's mom didn't immediately shout at me, but she furrowed her brow and said, "George, I know you young people are hot-headed, but divorce is not a small matter. How can you just say it's over like this?" I chuckled lightly. "You should ask your daughter. She's the one who asked for a divorce. If I'm not mistaken, this is the 13th time Anna has told me she wants to get divorced. If she wants it so badly, I have no choice but to grant her wish." Anna's mom froze for a moment, forcing a smile. "Anna is just acting out. She's still young, not mature yet." "Is that so?" I responded coldly, "She's half a year older than me. Is there something wrong with her development? She's 25 years old enough to have children, and yet her mind isn't mature?" Anna's mom fell silent, clearly embarrassed. Anna's dad cleared his throat and spoke up. "George, Anna doesn't understand some things. As parents, we owe you an apology on her behalf. But when there are problems in a marriage, it's never just one side's fault." I cut him off. I was already divorced. There was no need to hold back any longer. I decided to say whatever was on my mind. I walked up to Anna, looked down at her, and said in a deep voice, "Anna, stop playing dead. Tell your parents what exactly I've done in our marriage to deserve this slap. Your ex-boyfriend came back, and you said you didn't like me, the man who only cared about love and spent all day at home revolving around you. But wasn't it your family that told me to quit my job and stay home to take care of you because of your health? For all these years, I've been washing clothes, cooking, and making meals for you in all kinds of ways. Because you had stomach problems, someone who can't live without spice, never once cooked a spicy dish at home. Anna, think about it. Is this my fault?" Anna remained silent. Her mother couldn't help but speak up, "Don't just blame her. After all these years, you two haven't had any children. At first, we didn't want Anna to get pregnant out of wedlock, and in the end, she lost the baby. Who knows if there's something wrong with your body?" I spun around abruptly, raising my voice. "She did get pregnant out of wedlock, but pregnancy isn't something that happens to just one person. Anna didn't want it, was I supposed to force her? Why is it all my fault? Didn't I take responsibility for her afterwards? You say the baby was lost, but why don't you ask your daughter why the baby didn't survive? Whose fault was it? Was it mine? I didn't want to get angry, but all the suppressed emotions came rushing out, and I couldn't control myself. Was there something wrong with my wholehearted devotion? Why does loving someone become a mistake? In the end, I almost screamed in desperation. Anna, tell me, what exactly did I do wrong? My mom's eyes turned red instantly, and she trembled as she questioned Anna. Anna, we never mistreated you. We treated you like our own daughter, you know that. Your mom wanted an $880,000, but you refused to have a wedding. Your family couldn't stand George, and we never said a word. We know George loves you and just wanted you two to be happy. And this is how you repay him? Anna's face drained of color as she muttered, "Sorry, Mom. Don't call me Mom. I'm not your mother." My mom snapped, her eyes blazing with fury. My dad's face darkened too. He lowered his head, clenching his fists tightly. Anna, I don't know why you brought both our parents here, but after all these years, I don't think I've wronged you in any way. I don't want to make this any uglier. Let's just part on good terms. I said wearily. Anna looked up at me, her eyes mixed with emotions, and after a long silence, she finally spoke softly. You're not wrong. All of this is my fault. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to be like this. George, give me a chance to make it right. I'll never do this again. A trace of sarcasm rose in my eyes. You didn't mean it. You've been enjoying everything I gave you while despising me at the same time. Anna, I really don't understand. You never gave me anything, and you don't have the right to decide anything for me. You've just been taking advantage of my love, over and over, and when I gave you my all you did was look down on me. I loved you and treated you well, but you used my love to hurt me, and now you act so high and mighty. I leaned closer to her and whispered. What are you, exactly? Anna, who the hell do you think you are? Anna's gaze trembled, her face turning as pale as someone who had been seriously ill. In the face of my accusations, she couldn't say a word. It was as if my words had pierced her heart, and for the first time, she was brought low in front of me. Her frail but strong back slowly curved under the pressure. Henry came back, and you clearly told me you wouldn't let him into the company, yet you kept him there. Anna, you were unfaithful in this marriage, broke your promises, and then turned everything around to blame me, calling me someone who only cared about love. Well, isn't this perfect? I'm helping you two out. Anna hastily lifted her head. I don't have anything to do with Henry. We're just colleagues. I mocked, you dare tell me there's nothing going on between you? Do ordinary colleagues need to have lunch together every day and text each other constantly? Anna, do you really think everyone else is a fool, willing to be fooled by you? Anna opened her mouth but couldn't speak. I stood up, indifferent, and said. I've said everything I need to. I hope you won't bother me anymore. As I was about to walk out the door, Anna called out to me. Her voice trembled, as if for the first time she was torn from a shell and finally saw herself for what she was. George, if I'm willing to change, could we have another chance? I turned back to look at her, and her eyes were filled with uncertainty. Anna had always been so proud, so dismissive in front of me. In this relationship, she had always been the one in control. I had never seen her this panicked before. It's too late. I said softly, then closed the door. After leaving Anna, I started sending out my resume, planning to go back to work. Luckily, it hadn't been that long since I graduated, and the projects I had worked on were impressive enough. Many companies were still eager to hire me. In her eyes, I was probably worthless, probably not even as good as Henry's shadow. In this relationship, I had constantly fallen into self-doubt, living in pain every day, questioning if I really was that inadequate. But now, I realized she didn't have the power to define me. I was doing just fine. That evening, I cooked myself a big meal as a reward. In a few days, the cooling-off period would end, and I would be able to completely free myself from this relationship. But then a phone call interrupted my good mood. Henry's voice was distorted through the line. Let's talk. I looked at the chopsticks in my hand, impatient. I don't have anything to discuss with you. You wouldn't want me to keep coming after you. Some things are better talked out. He came to find me, yet his tone was still so arrogant. I hung up the phone decisively. The next day, when he called again, his tone had softened. I just want to discuss something with you. Just 1 hour. I won't waste your time. I didn't want to meet, but I was afraid he'd keep pestering me, so I agreed to meet him for a brief discussion. Henry got straight to the point. I don't want you to contact Anna anymore. Since you two have divorced, let's make it final. Don't keep dragging things on. I looked at him, dressed in a handmade suit, his hair neatly combed back, handsome and professional. No wonder Anna had been with him for so many years. You know, I was the one who was with her first. We had a great relationship. If it weren't for you getting in the way, maybe we would have gotten back together by now. Now that you're divorced, I don't want you messing with her anymore. I sneered. I've already blocked her. Henry didn't believe it. Anna's been distracted lately. If you're not the one bothering her, then who is? You people really have a talent for making things up, I laughed, then said sharply, I got in the way. What did I get in the way of? You two broke up, and we got together, that's not getting in the way. If Anna didn't want to marry me, should I have forced her at knife point? Why don't you go ask her yourself? As for your claim that I've been looking for her. I put my coffee down and looked at Henry with disdain. Don't worry, if you love her, you can keep an eye on her. I've lost all interest in that woman. Henry seemed ready to say more, but suddenly his eyes widened. Anna hurried past me, grabbing him by the arm and angrily pulling him away. What are you doing? Who asked you to come to him? Henry's face darkened. What's the problem with me looking for him? You two are getting divorced, why are you still thinking about him? You told me before that he was boring, always hanging around you, and you were annoyed by him. Anna froze, turning to look at me. I shrugged, unfazed. I had heard this too many times before. It no longer hurt. Anna gritted her teeth. You're crazy. What I do with him has nothing to do with you. We're not even divorced yet. Henry stared at her in shock. But we were together first. You've said you couldn't forget me, haven't you? Anna, don't you remember what we had? The past is over. Anna said coldly. I'm married, and I have nothing to do with you. She looked at Henry, her tone firm. I warn you, don't come after him again, or I won't be so polite. Henry's face turned pale with anger. He stared at Anna for a long moment, then gave a bitter smile. Anna, you really are something. He suddenly yanked his arm away, and his retreating figure was filled with embarrassment as he quickly left the cafe. Anna pulled me out of the cafe. She was silent for a while before speaking. I'm sorry, you're right. At first, I did want to get back together with Henry. I was too young, too unwilling to accept being dumped, so when he came back, I wanted to show him how successful I was now, to make him regret leaving me. I mistook this obsession for love, she said, rubbing her face, her voice softening. Now I realize, I stopped loving him long ago. I didn't know when it started snowing, but the flakes fell gently on Anna's shoulders, yet she didn't seem to notice, offering only a bitter smile. After what you said that day, I went home and thought about it for a long time. I realized I was really terrible. I thought you couldn't live without me, that you needed me. I took advantage of your love and hurt you recklessly, even looked down on you. Now, looking back, you loved me so simply, so genuinely. Your love was noble. I was the one who was vile. The streetlights in the distance flickered on. A snowflake landed on her eyelashes, and it quickly melted into a tiny, glistening droplet. Her voice dropped to a whisper. After you left, when my stomach hurt, no one made me soup anymore. I wanted medicine but couldn't find any. I wanted to buy it, but I didn't even know the name of the medicine. Now I realize, it wasn't that you couldn't live without me. It's that I couldn't live without you. I'm lost every day. I hate this feeling of not knowing what to do, but honestly, I don't know where I'm headed. The bed sheets are cold, and it scares me. Anna covered her face, giving a bitter laugh, her voice hoarse. I've loved you for so long. She said all of this, and it was a bit of a shock. When we were together, Anna had always been so stingy with her words, leaving me to play the lone fool in the relationship. I didn't expect her to say so much now. But it came too late, and I didn't want to listen anymore. I reached out and caught a snowflake. It was cold and melted in my palm. Anna, you don't love me. You're just not used to having someone constantly around you, and now that I'm gone, you're afraid. You're just scared there won't be anyone else who loves you like I did. I turned to leave, but Anna grabbed my arm. She slightly bowed her head, her expression almost pitiful. George, I'm begging you. I've never begged anyone in my life, but I'm begging you. Give me another chance, please. I was wrong before. I didn't know you were so important to me. I'll change, I swear. I pulled her hand off and interrupted her. Anna, no one's going to wait around for you forever. I'm not your parents. They only have you as their daughter, but for me, there are many women. Anna stood there for a long time. She screamed my name, the sound filled with pain and desperation. George. In the snowstorm, she was dressed so lightly, her eyes reddening as she stood there. I won't divorce you. I turned back, indifferent. Then I will sue. Anna, this is pathetic. Stop acting like a dog. It was as if she had been choked, staring at me, her face full of sorrow and regret. A tear suddenly fell from her eyes. The same words she had thrown at me during the divorce came back to me now, returned by me in full. And now, I understood her. When you no longer love someone, hurtful words come so easily. She finally regretted it. But unfortunately, the right answer took too long to come, it has become the wrong answer. Henry never managed to make a foothold at Anna's company. He was caught for resume fraud. All of his experience turned out to be fake. The trigger was a project he took on, which ended in utter chaos. He couldn't even get the decimals right in his proposal, resulting in massive financial losses for the company. The assistant manager felt something was off and decided to do a background check on Henry, only to discover he had gotten in through Anna's connections. The situation escalated quickly, and Henry was forced to leave the company in disgrace. His reputation was ruined, and he couldn't find work in the industry anymore. He had no choice but to return to his hometown. On the flip side, things were going well for me. I was thriving in the workplace. A reputable company in the industry reached out to me, offering me a position as vice president. I planned to work for a few more years to gain experience before venturing into my own business. Things were going well for me, but not for Anna. She ended up in the hospital again due to excessive drinking. Her friend called me in a panic. George, please, Anna's been drinking all night, and no one can get through to her. She keeps calling your name, crying, saying sorry. Can you come and see her? I paused for a moment. Sorry, I have a meeting today. I'm busy. Her friend, clearly frustrated, continued, she really loves you. How can you be so heartless? I sneered. After I got in the accident, she was on FaceTime, flirting with Henry. I called her several times, but she didn't answer. I finally had to call an ambulance to save my life. The doctor said if I waited any longer I might not survive. My broken ribs nearly punctured my lung. But when Anna found out, her only response was a nonchalant, okay, got it. It was in that moment that the last bit of love I had for her died. I finally realized that no matter how hard I tried, I could never warm her cold, stone heart. When it came to being heartless, I could only bow to her in defeat. My fists clenched, and without saying a word, I hung up the phone. The love I had once craved so desperately, when offered again after so long, I found it no longer mattered. It had already expired, and I had no desire for it anymore. Her parents soon called me from a new number. Anna's mother, no longer as domineering as before, was crying as she begged. George, Anna really loves you. We were wrong before. Please let us make it up to you. From now on, we'll do whatever you say, no arguments. Please, give her another chance. I couldn't help but find it somewhat amusing. I really don't understand why human nature is so cheap. When you are in a hurry, they will only think you are cheap. But when they realize you can walk away, only then do they realize they have nothing to rely on. Just come see Anna. Her stomach's bleeding badly, and she kept mumbling your name when she passed out. Her mother was crying so hard she could hardly catch her breath. I used to care when Anna had stomach pains, but now, I only felt annoyed. I hung up the phone and picked up the meeting materials as I walked into the conference room. Where were they all when she needed help? Now, even if she died, I wouldn't shed a single tear for her. I think, in Anna's situation, she might not be able to come to court for a divorce. But to my surprise, 3 days later, she showed up. Her face was pale and gaunt, her body thinner, and she looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't bring herself to. She didn't beg or plead. She just signed a new agreement. All of the assets were to go to me, and she didn't want a single penny. Let this be my chance for redemption, she said with a bitter smile. This way, I can face myself and have the courage to pursue you again. I shook my head with a soft sigh. If I had known this would be the outcome, I wouldn't have bothered in the first place. Once, she whispered, I did want to be happy with you. I had given everything to love this person. I laid myself bare, hoping she would see me, hoping she would return my love. But after all that effort, I hadn't gotten the results I wanted. I felt regret, but no real remorse. Anna looked down for a long time before softly saying, "I was the fool. I could have been happy. But I only realized it when I lost it." "Will you?" she asked tentatively. "Can I still contact you?" It seemed like she was afraid I might be annoyed, so she quickly added, "I won't bother you all the time. I just want a chance to know if you're doing okay." "No need," I said with a small smile. "What's done is done. We both need to move forward. Just," I added, as I gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, "when you meet someone who loves you again, don't treat them the way you treated me. Loving someone isn't wrong. But the one who is loved shouldn't trample on someone's feelings. Because love is precious, and you never know when it might disappear." Anna's face twisted in pain, like my words had been a knife, sinking deep into her. Backlit by the sun, I couldn't see her expression, only hearing the tremor of pain in her voice as she choked out, "Okay. Goodbye, then. I wish you happiness." I waved as I turned to leave. "George," she suddenly called out, her voice breaking like a dam had just cracked open. "George. I can't be happy without you." I suppressed the bitter ache that surged in my chest, not looking back as I walked firmly into the sunlight. When I love someone, I love them fiercely, honestly, giving everything I have. When I don't love, I don't look back. The past has faded away. I won't look back, I'll only keep moving forward. And that's it. Goodbye, Anna.